Okay, it's the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and begin. Some of us will still show up later during the session. But today's webinar is Storage Solutions with Software RAID and Hot Spares. Today is January 29th, 2013. My name is Todd Maxwell. And what we're going to be going over some real simple subjects on the software RAID is we're going to create a software RAID. So we'll do the creation of a software RAID showing the different settings. And then we're going to add a hot spare and showing a disconnected drive to the software RAID. And then we're going to be marking a unit as faulty and then remove from that software RAID unit. And then, of course, we will delete the software RAID and show a couple other things that are important. So without any of the further ados, let's go right into the DSS. Always make sure that you're updated to the current version. Right now, the current version, as you will see right here on the screen, is build 6806 up 7. This is the latest version, and you can see that I'm using the 16 terabyte. And what we're going to start off with for the software RAID, and I always recommend this for any DSS v6 or v7 setup, is that you set up the email. That way you get email information about alerts, alarms, and warnings. Where do you do this? It's very simple. If you follow my mouse, you click on Setup, and here if you go to Administrator Settings, and if we scroll down, you'll see that there's email notification. Now I've already set mine up. What I want to show you here is that you need the email, obviously the email address, and then you need the account information. Some may need the domain name, so be aware of that and verify that with your email administrator. So here I have just open -e at comcast.net that I'm using. Of course, you supply your password. It doesn't show it up here. And then, of course, enter your Simple Mail Transfer Protocol server, port 25. And if that needs to be changed, you can go to Advanced, because I know in some ISPs they do have different settings. I think 587 is one of them, and there might be another one that might be out there, or you might have, your company may have a certain one, but typically the default is port 25, and you can change that. If it is encrypted, please enable it. If you need to add other email addresses, you can do this with others as well. Once you apply, then you will get a test email coming back and confirming that it does work. So it lets you know immediately that you are receiving emails. And this is important because you're going to need information from the DSS for what we're talking about. But not only that, what happens if you're doing auto failover and you need to know if it's connected or synchronized or not. And you're able to communicate through ping nodes and the auxiliary port. So that information is very vital to have with the email alert system here. So I would do that first because we're going to need that for the next steps we go with. So now let's go right into the software RAID. If you go to Setup, and then you see right down here, you go to Software RAID, and right in the beginning, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the left button here. You'll see on software RAID units, let's scroll up, you can see all the units that I have, and right above, if you added new drives while the system is running, you could do a rescan, and that'll be able to introduce the new units that are coming in, and you'll be able to visit them right here. If you notice on the screen, I already created two software RAIDs, one on the left if you look, MD0 and MD1. And on the right, you can see where I am looking at the size of the units, the serial number, and of course where the status is in use. So here you can see that I have 3 drives that are in MD0. This is my RAID 5 that I've already created. Now we will create another RAID 5 and go through the steps, but I wanted to point out that way you can visibly see which drives that are in the array. If we decide to at any point in time, we can add a hot spare to any of these software RAIDs that we have. So if we take, let's say, one of these units down here, let's disconnect these, and we take S014, this unit, we can assign that to, let's say, this RAID 5 MD0. So let's go ahead and add that. So now you can see that you can add spares for any of your arrays. So let's go ahead and create a RAID 5. So RAID 5, I need a minimum of 3 disks. So let's take these 2 units, units S008, 009, and S010. If we look at our RAID levels here, so we can create different types of RAIDs. RAID 0, highly unrecommended, especially for production environments. It's good for testing, or if you're just quickly needing a volume up just to transfer data, but it doesn't really have any significance, then a RAID 5 is fine. Additionally, we provide RAID 1 and a RAID 5 and RAID 6. So let's go with a RAID 5, and I need a minimum of 3 disks. And now let's talk about the chunk size. Here, the chunk is an atomic mass of data that is written to the devices. So it's really great for overhead for large files than it is lower for the chunks that are large. So, but small files benefit from smaller chunks. So for uses with database and email servers, you should go for really a bigger RAID chunk size of 64K or larger. And here you can see that we have different variable sets for you: 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and 128, and 256K. So you have to think about what the chunk will do for you is that, so let's take, for example, if you're doing a lot of asynchronous random reads, then the optimal chunk size is going to be several times larger than the typical I/O size you are accessing. That way, it is likely that most individual reads will be entirely from one disk. And with a lot of asynchronous random reads, you can read from most of the disk in parallel. Now, you could see that a very small chunk size wouldn't be too good for random reads, since all of the disks would have to seek to a random location before a single I/O access can complete. That's why, since the I/O block will span chunks on all the disks, and this is obviously due to the mechanical hard drives. This would not be a problem with the SSDs, since the random access latency is much lower than SSDs as compared to the mechanical drives. So we'll just take the defaults for this, and then you see this show advanced. Now in here, this is where we offer you to allow to create in degraded mode. This would be less disks. I don't recommend this feature. That's why it's default to disabled. If you have a RAID 5 and you have less than the required amount, you can create it, but I don't recommend this feature. So it's best just to create the proper amount of disks for your RAID array. So bear that in mind. Now you'll see the parity algorithms. So you have 4 you can utilize and take advantage of. This places the data on parity blocks in a certain matrix. Now the default option is left symmetric, which we found out to be the best algorithm for large reads. And another recommended value is left asymmetric. The left symmetric is known to be good when reading large amounts of data. All the disk heads within the same row skip over the parity at the same time, thus reducing disk synchronization time. So overall, the left symmetric placement is generally preferable than the other settings with regards to a wider range of workloads. So that's why we leave it at left symmetric. Now you can test, and you probably should test your chunk size and either left symmetric or asymmetric. I've very rarely seen any right symmetric or right asymmetric, but those values are there because of the creation and early stages of RAIDs. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the RAID 5. And while that's creating, let's scroll on down. Here you will need to enable the send the array events. This includes resyncing, recovering progress, include RAID status. And if you're creating, like we're creating the RAID 5 now, it will provide you information at every 20% interval of its status. So it's good information to have. It's also good information if a RAID array is degraded. So you want to be able to set the software RAID email notification. So we've already applied that, and if we scroll on down, the drive identifier, this is really important because let's say you have a RAID 5 that we just created and one of the disks fail or that are faulty. Here we can identify the drive. If I were to click on, let's say, our hot spare that we created, here it is, this hot spare. We were looking for that serial number. And let's say that drive, for some reason, is faulty and it's failed. And I don't know which one it is. What I can do is identify it with this serial number. And I believe it was this one. No, it was a 14. And once we click on it and hit apply, what's going to happen is that's right now that drive is blinking to identify for you to find that single drive based on the identification sending the signal out to the drive, and of course your light emitting diodes, LEDs on the drive, will light up. Now to stop it, all you have to do is click on it again and hit apply. By the way, this works for about 1 minute, so it gives you enough time to go out quickly, identify the drive if you need to pull it, and set it to faulty. Now let's go ahead and look at our new RAID 5 that we created, which is right here on the left, MD2. And here you can see what we're going to find immediately is the status. So we have our 3 drives. You see their states, and we'll go into that in a second. Let's scroll on down. Here we see our RAID level, RAID 5, the creation time and the uptime, the array size, and the device sizes. So these are the units of 3 hard drives that we added to the RAID 5, identifying their size. The layout is left symmetric. Our chunk size is 64K. Its state is active, but it's resyncing. Now, what does that mean? It means, yes, I can go ahead and create the volume group right now, and we'll go ahead and see that. So let's go right to configuration, volume manager, volume groups, and you could see that our MD2 that we created is available. But what I want to point out to, even though we can go ahead and create a volume group, and we can go ahead and write data to it, create NAS, iSCSI, fiber channel logical volumes, performance is going to be a little lower because right now it's synchronizing. So you want to keep that in mind before you go ahead and create the volume group, because you'll have a performance hit. So you want to let it complete. Let's go back to setup, and we'll go to software RAID, and let's go to MD02. And here you can see the time that it's going to take. So right now it's looking like it's going to be about 123 minutes, 2.5, I would say 2.5 hours, depending upon what other, if you're doing any other activity. Now right now I'm using an Intel JBOD, so I'm using SAS drives, 10K, and so here it shows the percent time as well. So when it reaches 100%, then it'll be fully active. So let's look at one that is completely fully active. Oh, by the way, you can remove it. So let's say you really wanted to scratch your RAID 5 and add 4 disks. So you could stop it here. But once it's completed, then we have to remove it. Once we create the volume group, then we have to remove it from our console screen in the extended tools. And I'll show you this at the end. So let's take a look at one that is completed. Here, let's look at MD1. MD1 really is a RAID 1 that I've created. Its state is active. Okay, so you can see that it's complete there. I can remove it, but if I make it a volume group, then I will be not able to do that. Let's go ahead and do that. So if we go to configuration, volume manager, volume groups, and we see we have available MD1. I'm going to go ahead and make it a new volume group. We can also add it to another volume group, but I don't recommend this because if you have one RAID array that is independent and you create another RAID array and you want to add that to it or another volume, the problem would be that if we had a faulty disk or if that array went down, then you would take the whole volume down. So it's best to go ahead and create a whole new volume. So be aware of that. So we'll just create a new volume and we can rename it if we want. And now it is formatting. So here it only takes like a momentarily. It's available. You can see that it's forming it right now. And we'll go back to, let's look at the state. It'll take about another 10 seconds to complete in its total time, as you can see right here. So VG01 is available now to create iSCSI, NAS, and fiber channel volumes. So let's go back to setup. We'll go to software RAID. And let's go look at MD1. And here you can see I have no more ability to go ahead and remove it. So we have to remove this in the extended tools. So I just want to point that out in case you do create your array, you do create your volume group, you do put data on it, you need to be aware of that. Now we added a hot spare to MD0, which is a RAID 5 or 3 disks. Here again, we show all the attributes and values of the RAID 5, its active, its current state, and of course we did not create the volume group, so we can remove it. But what I want to point out here is, what do these states mean? Let's just say I do have a faulty drive, and I wanted to remove that faulty drive and let my hot spare be able to repair it. So if I wanted to designate, let's say, S005, and we want to set that as faulty because we see that there are problems with the drive. The email alert system came up with S005 that there was either some I/O errors with it. The drive went in a fault state. Here we can go ahead and set it to fault. And now at this point you can see alerts coming up on my screen. I'm getting emails to let me know that there's a fault on that drive, and now I can remove it. Now when doing so on a RAID 5 with this minimal amount of disks, as you can see that now I don't have the ability to remove anything. So at this point, why? Well, it's because it's going to use that hot spare, and its hot spare is going to immediately kick in. Now let's go add a hot spare to one of our either MD2 or MD1. So let's go back to software RAID units. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and select one of these available drives, and we'll add it to MD1. So it's good to have a hot spare for all your RAID arrays that you create. By the way, I want to let you know that you cannot expand an existing RAID, software RAID that you've created. You can do that with hardware RAIDs, and this is where we recommend a lot of the hardware RAID values. So here we look at the MD1, and we'll see that our hot spare is assigned and working. So that's what the states are for. Obviously, if you put your mouse over it, it gives you information that is part of the array. If you look here, these are for hot removes. These are typically set for the system, which is characterized as state of unit. If you need more information, if you click on any of these functions with the question mark right here, you will get a plethora of information. So this will help you identify more of what these states and values are. Okay, now, so let's say we wanted to remove this software RAID that we've created, which was, I think we made it for MD0. So let's go ahead and verify once more. Looks like it was MD1. Let's verify. There we go. So here we can't remove it. What you need to do is access our remote console access. Very simple. What you can do is use PuTTY, which is a great SSH program. If you go to Setup, Administrator Settings, you want to make sure that if you scroll all the way down, that here you want to enable the remote console access. I let the defaults of set port of the 22,222, just create a simple password, and I leave it wide open currently. Now I've already have PuTTY open and enabled, so here you can see on the screen that I'm able to access it. And let's do Control-Alt-W, which is Extended Tools. Oh, I went to the wrong one. Extended, so it'd be Control-Alt-X. Sorry about that, because I wanted to show you something in the hardware tools. So here is the Extended Tools where I can delete contents of units. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, number 14, of course it's going to ask you the password again, because we don't want to make this that easy for you to delete any type of volume. So here's where we can delete the volume that we created with our RAID array. You can see that MD0 is ready, and you can see MD1 is in use, also MD2 is in use, and along with S001, which is our RAID array from a hardware RAID. But bear in mind, if I do select these with a space bar and state the OK button, then it's going to reboot the system. So we really don't want to do that right now, obviously, because we're live. So that's where you delete a software RAID once you configure it in the volume. Where do I want to take you next is what happens if you want to know what the performance was, and doing a simple performance. We want to go to the hardware tool. So if we go to Control-Alt-W, and again we enter the password, Here, if you look all the way down in option number 7, System Benchmarks, really a nice tool to have, especially if you want to do a little disk performance test. What I recommend is that you do this before you format the volume, before you create the volume group, because you won't be able to do it with the write test. So for example, if I want to do the write test on a volume that is already available and it states it ready, that means that volume has not been formatted or it is not a volume group yet. So this is the reason why we don't do this, because it's dangerous. We don't allow you to do it, and that's why you're locked down. So for the ones that I just created, I can easily, that it has not been a volume group, go ahead and click OK and select it, and then we will get a performance test. When you do this, that at least you're getting some type of understanding of when you test for your different types of RAID, what your max speed in megabytes will be. So if we look at for a read test, I can do this for volumes that are created and volumes that are not, as you can see. So let's look at the one we did with MD1, and then we'll be able to get an output from that. So this only takes a second, and it's good to do this with different types of RAID sets. So here you can get your performance. So this is a software RAID. Now let's take a look at the hardware RAID that I have. And so it's denoted by S001. So this is the one I have currently in the system. I'm using an LSI RAID controller 9260. Here you can see the performance is a little better. And of course you can always test this with different variables with your SAS, SATA disk, and SSDs. Well, that completes our webinar for the software RAID. By the way, thank you everybody for coming and viewing it. We have a lot of these all stored on our website. They're right here located at www.open-e.com. And if you click on the support tab right here, you'll see webcasts and videos. And obviously you can see that there's a lot of videos that are done from many engineers, including myself and Giannis, just about everything that we try to cover. If you have any more ideas about some additional webinars that would be helpful to you, please send them in at pre-sales@open-e.com and we'll address them. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.